Greetings from Apex Hospital. This is a case of 2 centimeter umbilical hernia with divarication M2 to M4 and W2. The initial access for ETEP was made through the left hypochondrium using an optical trocar. The retrorectus space is being accessed here using the optical trocar, and once we are sure we are in the right space, insufflation has been started and further dissection done using the trocar. The first trocar is placed in at the lateral border of the left rectus muscle, and a bipolar shear has been introduced laparoscopically to create further space for insertion of the camera port and the arm 2 port. The entire left rectus muscle is mobilized from the posterior rectus sheath so that there is enough space for the robotic instruments to work. After this, the robot is docked and a monopolar cutting scissors in the right and a grasping forceps in the left is used to start the dissection. Here, the posterior rectus sheath is being divided in the M2 region to access the extraperitoneal space so that we can make the crossover to the right rectus rectus space. However, because this patient has significant divarication in the upper part in the M2 and M3 region, it is being difficult to identify the posterior rectus sheath, and inadvertently the linea alba has been damaged here, which we realize once we open and find that we have reached the subcutaneous fat. Therefore, further lateral dissection is done and a second opening is made, which is barely at the margin of the right rectus muscle, and therefore there are two inadvertent injuries to the linea alba in this case in the upper part, which we will need to repair at the end of the procedure. This is the right retrorectus space, which is now being developed further caudally to expose the entire divarication as well as the umbilical hernia. The dissection is now being progressed downward, and this is the area of the umbilical hernia where the peritoneum is being reduced from the umbilical swelling. After the reduction of the umbilical hernia, the right and left retrorectus space are alternately being expanded by division of the posterior rectus sheath near the linea alba. In the lower region, in the M4, we see that the divarication has started to come together and it is not significant. So we have stopped the dissection in the lower part, and now the right retrorectus space is being further mobilized to make good space for the mesh. A non-absorbable PVT suture number 1 is being used here for closure of the divarication and hernia, and the closure is being started from the M2 region at the highest point of dissection where the posterior rectus sheath was divided and where there is a linea alba injury, which is also being taken in the suture line, so that we can reinforce this area with underlying mesh later on. This suturing in the upper part of the linea alba is the biggest advantage of the wristed instruments in robotic surgery. The suturing is now being continued downwards in the caudal direction to completely suture the linea alba, which is divaricated. Here we can see that there has been complete apposition and the entire linea alba has been reinforced. Following this, a monofilament PDS suture 20 is inserted for closure of the small peritoneal rents that were made during the dissection of the linea alba. Once complete closure of all peritoneal rents is done, a suture is introduced inside to measure the length of the mesh that will be required to cover the entire area. This is a 20 centimeter suture which we can see is seen to completely measure the area for reinforcement. A 20 by 15 centimeter medium weight macroporous polypropylene mesh is inserted and slowly spread so that it lies flat on the surface. This is confirmed by taking out the camera from this port and putting it through the accessory port so that we can look at the lateral margins of the mesh which are lying flat.